want some sauce?
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.
So I have a friend named Tricia, and she claims that she doesn't know how to cook. She says that, you know, when she tries to cook, basically everything gets ruined. Well, that started making me think, you know, I should do a video to show her a simple recipe that it's going to be really hard for her to mess up. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of onion. And we're not going to need a whole lot of onion either, so I'm just going to end up maybe cutting off a piece about that big. And what we want to do is we want to slice the onions thin in this particular case. Okay, so now that that's been chopped, I can just kind of, like a guillotine, go through and chop this a little bit more. Now, the question might be, how much onion should I use in this recipe? Quite honestly, I could use this amount, I could use a little bit less, I could use an entire onion. It's going to be okay, okay? It's really up to you and how much onion flavor you want. And we're going to be using some shrimp, and these come frozen. Now these are uncooked shrimp, okay? And you might not be able to see them inside here or whatever, but they're uncooked. The shell has been taken off and they've been deveined. Deveining is when it removes the digestive tract from the shrimp, and that's off the rear of it. The shells do add flavor, but I'm trying to show you how to do this for somebody that does not cook, that is a little nervous around things in the kitchen. Okay, something easy that anyone can do, hard to mess up. If you're not good with a knife, like I said, use a grater and just grate about this much off, and you're going to have a lot of liquid afterwards. You can throw the liquid inside the pan too, but now what we're going to do is we're going to get the pan ready and we're going to start actually cooking some of this. But before we do, what we have to do is we have to get our water ready for our pasta. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fill this about 3/4 full. While the water is warming up, at this point I'm going to decide what kind of noodles I want to use. And I'm going to end up using fettuccine. Okay, I have some fettuccine left over from a few days ago. But you have things like spaghetti, you have thin spaghetti, angel hair, pasta, you end up having thick spaghetti. You know, there's all these different kinds. You have linguine, you have fettuccine. They're all really the same base ingredient. It's just that they're shaped different. Okay, and it has a little bit of a different texture during the time that, you know, you're cooking and eating it. Here is our water, and now we need to flavor this water, because when we put the dried pasta inside here, it's going to end up absorbing whatever's inside here, right? And so if it's just water, the pasta is going to end up being very bland, right? So what we do is we end up putting salt inside here. How much salt? Like that. We want this to be like seawater. So I have a pan on here that I have been heating up a little bit. It's not on super high. You want most of the cooking you're going to be doing is going to be medium or around medium. Could be medium low, could be medium high, but most of the time that's really the temperature you want to keep things. Sometimes you put it all the way on high, and sometimes you put it all the way on low. But it really is important on what the temperature is when you are cooking things, because it changes the flavor and it changes the texture and it changes all sorts of stuff. And if it's too hot of a pan and you throw something in there, the outside cooks but the inside's raw. Okay? If you keep it on a very low temperature, it can dry it out. Okay? So you're constantly trying to find that happy medium. In this case, we're going medium heat. Medium heat. And what I want to do is I want to put a good amount of olive oil. Okay, how much did I put there? Maybe 1/4 of a cup, maybe a little less. Okay, but I want to put a lot of olive oil in here. This particular sauce has an oil base to it, so it coats the noodles. Okay, and then so that's what we're doing here. And olive oil, for the most part, is actually really good for you. Can you use another oil? You can, but I wouldn't. There's nothing wrong with using olive oil, okay? And this is extra virgin olive oil. There's different kinds of olive oil. You have light olive oil, you have virgin olive oil, you know, blah, blah, blah. Okay, all these different kinds. Extra virgin is usually the best kind, and there's different qualities of it. But most of the time, any type of olive oil you get, extra virgin can be fine. Even regular olive oil, not extra virgin, just like a regular olive oil, has a very rich flavor, but it'll still work. Okay? anyway, you see that I stuck about a half a stick of butter in here, something like that, because we need to get a little bit of butter flavor inside there, a little bit of milk solids. The reason why I don't use just strict butter is because the butter will burn because of the milk solids. When you end up putting olive oil inside here and then you put the butter, it makes it a lot less likely that this will burn, okay? So that's why you do that. If you put a little olive oil first and then you put your butter, you have a much greater chance of not burning your butter, because if you burn the milk solids, it can start tasting nutty and kind of a little off. Using the edge of my knife, I scoop up the onions that I have cut. Now if you want to, you can use a garlic press and you can squeeze a couple of fresh cloves in there. I like buying this stuff where it's already been chopped up or diced or whatever. And I'm going to be putting about the equivalent of about 2 large cloves, or maybe 2.5 medium-sized ones. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of stir this up. Now we do not want our onions and garlic to burn. We do not want these to turn brown. What would cause these to turn brown? Too high of a temperature. That's why after I had thrown the onions in, I saw that they were like wanting to caramelize a little bit, which makes a fantastic flavor, but I don't want my garlic to ever burn because it'll turn bitter, okay? We want these to look a little clear. We don't want these to look brown, okay? So I had turned it down to a low flame where it is right in between medium and low, okay? Now we have not seasoned this, so I'm putting a little bit of salt in here. And then there's our different versions of salt. You can get kosher salt and you can get table salt. Kosher salt, it would look like you're putting a lot more in than compared to table salt. And table salt, a little goes a long way because it's such small little pieces. Kosher salt's like flakes, okay? So if you see me ever cooking with kosher salt, it's going to look like I'm putting a lot more in, okay? But, okay, at this point, that looks pretty good, okay? This is black pepper. I'm just putting a little bit of black pepper inside here. How much black pepper? It's up to you. This is crushed red pepper flakes. That's enough. What I have put there, and that's literally a pinch. I didn't use all of it that was in my hand, okay? But this will give it just a little bit of heat. Okay, and now you should be able to see that everything has kind of changed color a little bit. The smell has changed inside here. Okay, and now I am going to be throwing my shrimp inside here. The shrimp are thawed out. They are not frozen. Okay, now this is the thing about shrimp. They cook very fast. And you also have to remember that anytime that you're cooking something, there's residual heat, right? And in cooking they call it carryover, okay? The very first thing that happened is we had a hot oil, right? Well, I had thrown in cold shrimp. It lowers the temperature of the oil at first, okay? And then the shrimp will start taking the heat that was from the oil because hot moves to cold. That's physics, right? And anyway, what ends up happening is the hot goes to cold, and as it starts collecting that heat, the shrimp are going to start shrinking and they're going to start turning pink. The longer we leave the shrimp inside here, the more curled up they're going to get and the smaller they're going to get, and then the more they're going to start being a little rubbery. Flavor is going to be fine, but they're going to look small and they're going to look rubbery. Okay. Now, as soon as they turn pink, that's pretty much telling us that they are cooked. Okay. And then so you kind of want to turn these dudes over a little bit. And when it looks like they're about 80% cooked or so, technically at that point you can turn the fire off and just let these guys set in here for like another minute, then take them out, and then you're good to go. And they're going to be cooked all the way through. Okay, if you kind of just let it sit there and you cook it all the way until it looks like they're done, there's still heat that's inside the shrimp, and you're going to have overcooked shrimp. Okay, at this point right here, believe it or not, these are done. Believe it, this is done right here. Okay, now I'm going to turn the fire off. I'm going to let these sit in here for just a second, and I'm going to take the shrimp out, but I'm going to leave that oil and sauce there. The shrimp is going to continue to cook even after I take it out of the pan because of carryover heat and residual heat. Okay. when you're cooking eggs, it's the same thing. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people overcook their eggs and it starts smelling like sulfur, or they're rubbery. It's because they cook them where they're well done in the pan, and then by the time that they actually put it on a plate, it's way overdone, you know. And I decided I'm going to add something to this. When we go to the store, you can get things like this, right, where it's already been pre-cut fresh broccoli florets. I'm going to add some broccoli to this. So in the cases of broccoli, obviously I wouldn't want to have a whole floret like that, okay? So, but I can kind of just go around and break this off. Usually after you break all the pieces off, the hardest part is going to remain. So you don't really have to cut it, you just snap them off. This piece is still edible, but there's going to be a lot of fibrous stuff in it. This is something that you can cut up, and like if you're going to be making Chinese food, you cut it up, you throw it inside there. There's nothing wrong with it. We're starting to have a little bit of a boil in the water. I'm going to throw those broccoli florets. This is what's known as blanching. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of cook the outside of it, and that will kill anything that's out there. It'll make it a little softer. It'll take some of the rawness edge off. And I'm only going to leave it in there for a minute or so, and then afterwards I want to take it out to stop the cooking. So I'm going to remove this, and there's still going to be residual heat that will continue cooking it a little bit more, but it's going to end up giving it a really nice bite and doneness. So it won't be overly cooked. As well as it, you know, if you end up using frozen, you can't really do this to frozen, and the reason why is because when you end up having frozen vegetables, the water that's within the cells of the vegetables, it crystallizes, right? Because when you freeze something, the water ends up crystallizing and it expands, and it has sharp edges. Well, it tears up the cells. So when it thaws out, you end up having a bunch of soggy, weird, you know, just bleh, vegetables, right? And you lose a lot of moisture. So what I had done is I went ahead and I put the broccoli straight into some cold water. This is doing two things. It's going to stop the cooking, okay, so that way you still have some bite to your broccoli. And the second thing it's going to do is, you remember all that salt that I had put in there? It's really too salty for the broccoli, right? So this will end up taking off some of the salt that's on the broccoli and make it where it won't have that strong salty flavor, okay? Now, when you boil it, you don't even have to add salt, quite honestly, and you can just add it later. But in this particular case, I'm just trying to kill two birds with one stone. So we've got a light boil. Rolling boil is better, but this will work for what we're doing. And that's actually a good amount of pasta for what we're actually doing, because it's only for one person. But now that that's inside here, we're going to go ahead and let this boil, and we're going to let this cook until it's about 95% done. Okay, some dishes I'll stop around 80%. Some I'll do around 90%. This particular time it's going to be around 95%. Okay, the reason why is because remember how I said this water, whatever flavors in there, the pasta is going to absorb. Well, the same thing is if we're making a sauce, and if this is 80% done, and I throw this in the hot sauce afterwards, then it's going to absorb part of the sauce, right? And then so it's going to end up having a really good flavor from the sauce. Our sauce is primarily an oil based, remember, because it's olive oil and butter. Okay, so I want this to have a little bit of bite. Sometimes they'll call it al dente, and I can do that by cooking this until it's about 95%. Right, this will still absorb a little bit of the olive oil and everything like that. It'll still do it, but it won't become overly cooked where it's almost like a dumpling that's like falls apart. Overcooked pasta will do that if you let it cook too long. And then some people will put olive oil in here and they'll say it prevents the noodles from sticking. It's a bunch of crap. You don't even bother. Don't waste any olive oil with that. How do you know when it's 95% cooked or 80% or whatever? Okay, as you start cooking it, you see how you can still see it's kind of dark in the middle and it's kind of lighter around the outside, and also the amount of bend it has, how flexible it is. That's going to be the indication. But at the same time, when it starts getting to a point that you think the pasta looks like it's almost done, just take a piece out and bite into it. You know, does it taste like it's cooked all the way through? If so, you're probably at 95 to 100% cooked, right? Now, with the broccoli, you can serve it on the side if you want to, or you can do what I'm going to do, and that's just simply put it inside the garlic and onion and butter and olive oil and everything like that. Give it a good soaking. Okay, and at this point we're about 75% with the noodles. Okay, I can tell because they're getting there, but I can tell that they still have a lot of bite left in them. Okay, now as far as the sauce goes, this is when we can start adding in some herbs if you want to. The way that this is right now is actually fine. Don't really have to add anything. I am going to add just a little bit of a couple of things, okay, but you don't have to. The first is I'm going to be adding just a hint of dried basil, like that. A hint. I mean, it's barely even going to show up in the flavor, but it does end up adding a little bit of complexity to the flavor. This is dried parsley. Doesn't add a whole lot of flavor, but it adds a little bit of color to everything. And that's really the only two things I have to add to this. I don't really have to add anything else. Technically, those two things I didn't even have to add. We are about almost 85 to 90%. I'm going to take the noodles that now are about 90 to 92%. We're going to throw it in here. And it's okay if some water comes inside here too. It's alright if you get a little bit of water in there. What we want to do is we want to take this, stir it all around, and we want to get a nice coating of this oil that has the flavor of the garlic. It's got a little bit of the herbs inside there. It's got a little bit of the onions inside there. It's got a little bit of the shrimp flavor because we had fried up the shrimp in this. Okay, and right now the pasta is still cooking. Okay, and it's starting to absorb everything that's in this pan. Now we're going to end up throwing our shrimp inside here. And if we were using chicken, we would throw our chicken inside here. If you wanted to add more butter to this, you could. Because with dishes like this, butter really tastes great with broccoli and shrimp. And I'm going to put a little bit of powdered Parmesan. And this also has a little bit of Romano. Okay, but I don't want to go too crazy with it either, because this is not an Alfredo. I just want to have a hint of that cheese. Okay, but each one of these pieces of pasta you want to have coated in that oil. That's going to prevent it from sticking. Okay, and like I said before, it's going to end up adding flavor. You know something? I'm a heavy tipper. Let's put a little bit more. I'm a heavy tipper. So now at this point we can plate this up. But there you go. See, you can do it. Anybody can do this. Big question is well, how much salt, how much pepper? Only you're gonna know. How do you know if this is gonna taste good? Well, you end up taking a noodle. Now for me, I have problems with certain foods. I'm not really supposed to eat this, but I'm gonna put some in my mouth and taste it. Honestly, the only thing I think that it might need is a little bit more black pepper. I'm just going to put a little bit here and there. And I'm a Parmesan kind of guy, so I'm going to put a little bit more of that on here. And now we have a winning thing here. Also, if you wanted to cut up some fresh parsley, throw on there just for the sake of saying, look it, you know, you can. But there you go. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of, I haven't decided what I'm going to call this. Recipes for crappy cooks, maybe? I don't know. But hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe. Feel free to share this wherever you want to share it. And Tricia, I know you're watching. I want you to make this. I know you can do it. You won't mess it up. Because in the future, I don't want you saying, oh, I don't know how to cook. I want you to say, I know how to cook and I'm good at it. Anyway, that's that. Until next time, talk to you later.